The amount of new romances getting released each week is enough to make anyone's head spin. Except not you, because you've got me combing through 99 new releases over the course of 4 videos to let you know what's good and what's a skip. I'm working off of a list that Goodreads released earlier this year that's broken down by release month, and this time around I am focusing on June new releases. Let me tell you, it was a doozy. But amongst the myriad of mediocrity, a few books did shine bright, and hopefully even amongst the books that I found middling, you can find something that strikes your fancy. But before we get into it, I gotta tell you about something that makes me feel incredibly fancy, the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Now, why am I feeling fancy, you might ask? Because I am no longer inundated with spam calls and texts from people who have gotten my personal data online. Now, if you've ever wondered how scammers get your number and your email in the first place, it's because companies called data brokers sell your data online, but without our consent, and they make billions selling our information to scammers, to spammers, and honestly, anyone who wants to get their hands on our information. They're legally required to remove this information if we request it. They make it really, really challenging to do so, especially considering there's so many of these data brokers online. Yeah, they make it hard on purpose, which is why I recommend Aura to literally everyone I know. Take care of the hard part, the automatic removal of your data from these sites, and they make sure that that data stays off of those sites, which is really important to me because our data is getting leaked every single day. I feel like I got desensitized to this at one point. I literally didn't even care if I got an email alert had been hacked or data had been breached until it started affecting me, until I started getting these spam texts, these spam calls, and people started opening accounts in my name. That's when I started to take it really personally, which Aura really understands. Aura is all-in-one digital security. Good alerts if your personal information is found on the dark web. You can get real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 monitoring to keep your identity secure, secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and US-based support available around the clock if anything was to go wrong. And if anything ever does go wrong, Aura includes $5 million identity theft insurance protection with US fraud experts available 24/7 to help you out. Try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/chandler.ainsley. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being exposed and sold. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now let's get into the books. I am doing this video very similarly to how I did it last time, where I am kind of grouping the books together based on themes that I am seeing amongst them, or in my experiences in reading them. And this first one I'm calling Characters Might Have Finished But I Didn't. 3 books that I DNF'd. First up, we have A Legionnaire's Guide to Love and Peace. This book I DNF'd pretty early on because I could tell that this was the sort of pre-established romance that I am just not a personal fan of. So, the idea is that our heroine Catrian is a partner in war with this guy named Emery, right? They have been war companions and kind of like watching each other's back in this war against a demon lord. And at the start of the story, we know that they have, I think, already slept together, and they are trying to kind of figure out where they go from here. They are in this sort of like uncertain place in terms of their romantic relationship, and that sort of grows as the story carries on. But I don't like this. I do not like relationships that are established ahead of the start of the story. It's already a hard enough sell for me when a second chance romance comes around, where they had something, they broke up, and now we're seeing them get back together, you know, on page the second time. You have characters who got together off page and they're still together. What do I have to be invested in? What do I care about? Maybe if you're someone who just really likes to see 2 people in combat together, or the premise of this sounds interesting to you, maybe you'd be into it, but just wasn't really enough here for me, so I had to DNF. Next up, we have A Rare Find. This book, a historical romance that was just way too focused on the historical and adventure elements for my liking. It was sapphic, which I'm all here for. It's about Alfreda and Georgie. At the beginning, we find out that these 2 are kind of enemies. Alfreda is working with her father and trying to find Viking treasure, I want to say. He has this theory that there is like Viking treasure buried on the family property, and he has been kind of ousted from a historical society by, I guess, finding this treasure. He thinks that he will get back into the society's good graces. Kind of silly anyway, because he doesn't really do much in terms of like writing papers. It's mostly Alfreda who does it, and her father claims her work, which is, you know, kind of frustrating. But at the beginning of the story, our heroine ends up losing what she assumes to be treasure in a lake because she bumps into Georgie. Georgie is completely different than Alfreda. She is someone who is very popular in society. Her family is not like kind of frowned upon. I think Georgie and Alfreda might have been friends back in the day, but they are no longer friends or kind of enemies, and I think they have to like team up to find treasure in this book. There's just so much emphasis on the treasure plotline that I just didn't really care much about the romantic relationship here. I think I DNF'd this one at like 20 or 30%, just not really my personal cup of tea. But if you're someone who likes a lot of plotline in your historical romances and you're not really a fan of the same old, like maybe this could work for you. And then lastly, we have Cosmic Love at the Multiverse Hair Salon. Another sapphic book that I DNF'd, though I will say multiple sapphic books that I did finish. There were quite a few queer romances, generally speaking, for this video, so you'll see some of those later on. But Cosmic Love at the Multiverse Hair Salon didn't work for me, primarily because our heroine, her name kept being said, and that sounds like kind of a silly nitpick, but she is a hairdresser named Tressa, like tresses, Tressa Faye. That is said repeatedly, right? And I listened to the audiobook of this, so it was like, Tressa Faye moved to the table, Tressa Faye, Tressa Faye. I wanted to rip my fucking hair out, if I'm being completely honest with you. Premise behind this book is that Tressa Faye, she owns a hair salon. It doesn't actually really matter that she owns a hair salon, but we do learn that she's like allergic to hair products and only can cut hair. So I guess that's interesting. But she gets into a wrong number sort of situation with this lady named Meryl. Meryl texts her and is like, hey, where are you for our date? Tressa's like, I don't have a date with anyone. Who is this? And they sort of have this like flirty, meet cute, bantery sort of situation, which I was honestly kind of invested in at the beginning of the book, but it slowly kind of devolves when I realized the reason this is called the Multiverse Hair Salon is because our heroine is texting someone a month ago, or they're in different time periods when they're texting each other. And in the present day, Meryl has gone missing. Tressa finds it to be her responsibility to figure out what happened to Meryl and if there's anything that she can do text-wise to get Meryl back so that she can actually meet this person in real life. There's just way too much emphasis on the multiverse aspect of the story. I'm not super into these kinds of plot lines. I read another multiverse sort of situation back in the last video. That one was kind of intriguing, but the multiverse situation there was like, should I cheat on my reliable boyfriend because I'm scared of commitment? In an alternate reality, I'm with someone else. This doesn't have that. It's more just like, oh, can I find this person? It reminds me a lot of One Last Stop, which I also didn't really like. I find time travel or multiverse situations just a little too convoluted and a little too plot heavy for me. It's just like not my cup of tea. So it might be your cup of tea. It was not, in fact, mine. This next section I'm calling Ready, Set, Action because these books had some sort of action element, whether they are a Mulan retelling, which I feel like is sort of action oriented, or it's a spy novel. All of these books have that kind of commonality, and there's 5 of them. So I feel like that was sort of a interesting theme in the month of June. First up, we have Worth Fighting For, which is a Mulan retelling. If you're unaware, Disney has been doing this thing where they hire romance authors to retell their traditional Disney princess stories in an adult romance context without smut. So it's been an interesting mixed bag. I've enjoyed some of them, have really not enjoyed others, and I think Worth Fighting For kind of sits somewhere in the middle. So this one follows our main character Mulan, of course, and the sort of pretending to be a boy aspect comes in when her father, who she works for, ends up having a heart attack, and he has been trying to, I guess, buy a whiskey company, like a family-owned business, and they are very well known for these like high-end whiskeys, and they market mostly to men, specifically men in their like 40s. And they are, let's say sexist is I think a good way to put it. So whenever Mulan's father has a heart attack and is unable to work for a little while, Mulan's going to be taking over kind of the family business for a bit. She knows that the people whose, whiskey business she's trying to buy, they don't want to sell to a woman, so she pretends to be her dad. She doesn't pretend to be older than she is, and she doesn't try to pretend to be a man necessarily. Since her dad was in correspondence already with these people, she decides she's just going to pick up where her dad left off and I guess try to use all of the things that he told this family. Mulan's dad used to grow up on a farm in China. She's like, oh yeah, like I used to herd like cattle and sheep, like no problem. I'm so used to it. I loved growing up on a farm. And this obviously gets her into some tricky situations because she has absolutely no experience in a lot of these different situations. So the book is really Mulan trying to like navigate the complexities of what it means to be a strong businesswoman, prove to these people that she can buy their business and like be successful. Also, it's a big Chinese family as well on their side, and so she's trying to also fulfill their expectations of what a good Chinese girl would do. And of course, the love interest is Shang, the son of that family, or who is a part of the whiskey business. He is not a sexist, which I think is important because I don't think that this story would have worked quite as well had he been. I don't know that I loved this regardless. A lot of time spent trying to impress this family whose business needed to be bought back, and maybe not enough time on the romance between Mulan and Shang. So Mushu was a character in this book, and the narration for Mushu sounded a bit like Awkwafina, which was not necessarily a personal favorite of mine. It felt like her character was kind of unnecessary. She wasn't necessarily a sidekick so much as because she was just supposed to be Milan's friend. Also, I'm looking for my concealer brush and it is nowhere to be found. Additionally, I think that having a romance where one character is lying to another about their identity and the way they grew up and all of these different elements, I think is sort of a hard sell for me. I did like the ending. I thought it was like a nice bow on everything. I don't know, it did feel like a fun retelling. I think this is one of the better ones. I don't necessarily think that this is a story that everyone needs to like rush out and pick up. If you're a Disney adult and you really like the movies, maybe pick this one up, but I'm a Disney adult and I wasn't like, oh my god, y'all have to pick this one up. So it was okay. Give it some 3 stars. Next up is If I Told You I'd Have to Kiss You, which is a lesbian spy romance, which theoretically I love. In practice, not so much. And the reason for it is that I feel like I've been picking up so many romances lately where the hero and heroine or heroines or heroes, whatever, know each other before the story starts, or they were in a relationship before the story starts. Maybe they've broken up, they're still together, whatever. We don't actually get to see the relationship built on page. We just get to see the point of conflict for them happen at the very beginning of the book. In this case, we have 2 people. We've got Yardley and Casey. Both are spies. Neither know that the other is a spy. So they're having to keep a lot about their jobs and their day-to-day life secret from each other. And this leads to them essentially breaking up. They are madly in love, but don't feel like they can be 100% honest with each other. And so one dumps the other. They're both really heartbroken about this until they find out that the other is a part, the CIA or whatever organization that they are spies for. And they have to team up on a project together. And Casey, who normally works behind a computer screen, is actually going to be going out into the field, which is not something, again, that she normally does. So theoretically, I liked the idea of it. I do think there was a nice amount of like lesbian yearning and pining going on. I could tell these 2 really did enjoy each other and like love each other. But again, I wanted to see more of their relationship being built on page. And I felt like so much time was spent on this mystery / like action plot line that I ultimately didn't care about. I wanted it to be a little bit more romantic. It was supposed to be kind of a Mrs. and Mrs. Smith kind of, but ultimately I just kind of fell flat. So again, it's a 3 star. It was not a bad book, but it was not something that I particularly loved. Frankly, I've tried this author writing duo before and wasn't amazed. So I don't know if I should just call it quits with these 2 or if I should just keep going, because this was better than the first book that I read by them, but not by much. So yeah. Continuing on for 2 books I didn't like. I feel like honestly most of the action-y books I wasn't a huge fan of, and I think that's because the plot line tends to take center stage where the romance kind of is in the background, and that's kind of the case for these next 2. So we have Finders Keepers. This one's about Nina, who is recently single and unemployed, and she is back at her family home. She is faced with her childhood best friend turned nemesis who lives in the duplex that is attached to her family home. I guess it's like a duplex. She has one side, this guy has another side, and his family is no longer at that part of the duplex. It's just him, and she's living with her parents, and she just kind of doesn't feel like her life is going the way she wants it to. She was engaged to someone, she had a job she really enjoyed, but the job is no longer her job anymore. Not a great situation, kind of down in the dumps. And so is our hero, because his fiance recently dumped him, and his work visa in Paris ran out, so he is also kind of in need of a job. So both of them are feeling kind of sorry for themselves and had a little bit of a falling out / ghosting situation back in high school. So neither of them are super nice to each other at the beginning of the story, but they do eventually team up to hunt for lost treasure, which is something that brought them together in high school. There's an old eccentric man who left behind some sort of treasure and some sort of map, and they unfold secrets of the treasure together. This was a double whammy in that I didn't like the relationship, and I also really didn't like the plotline of this book. So much lead up for such a disappointing ending when it came to the treasure hunting. I also wanted it to be more adventurous with the treasure hunting. I felt like these 2 were just like going to the library to find, I don't know, like historic documents and shit to like point them in the right direction. And I'm not saying that's bad or, wouldn't be the tactic I would take first, but it just didn't feel very fun and like high stakes like I feel like it should have for this kind of book. And then the romance, despite there being an inordinate amount of flashback scenes and seeing them in high school together, I did not think that these 2 were, I want to say compatible, but I just didn't ultimately care about their romance. I wasn't like, wow, these 2 are just, the second chance is so needed. I was like, actually, I wish I hadn't given this book a chance at all. Probably meaner than it needed to be. I just really did not enjoy this book. I gave this one 2 stars. I might have given it 3. It's a 2-star read for me. It was just not it. Moving on to Alice Chen's Reality Check. This is romance for reality television lovers, okay? Main character Alice is dating this guy named Chase. Actually, they're not even dating. I think they're engaged. And they decide to go on this show called Dante's Inferno. And it's DAWN and then TAY, because this person's name is Don Taylor. They're going on Taylor's Inferno, which is a way to like test couples and their compatibility by putting them through really challenging situations. A little bit like Survivor Fear Factory, but maybe not like to those extremes. So she shows up with her fiance, and within like the first 20% of the book, Alice, who is a math teacher who is really high strung, ends up cheated on by Chase. He ends up, falling for someone else on this island, and she's kind of in a shitty situation because it's like, oh no, this is like for couples and I'm not a part of a couple anymore. But the good news is that her high school nemesis and quiz bowl, I guess, opponent, Daniel, is there on the island. He is also competing on this show. He also gets cheated on by his partner with Chase, I guess. Basically, Alice and Daniel's respective partners end up teaming up and like making out and stuff. Like kind of a couple swap situation. Alice ends up competing against her former fiance, and she has to team up with Daniel, who again was like her high school nemesis. And I guess, you know, they kind of fall for each other amongst witty jabs and barbs, which, you know, theoretically, not a bad idea. Theoretically, I like it. The problem was I fucking hated Alice. I like someone who's strategic, but felt like a very unrealistic character, and she felt very YA. She was really combative against Daniel, who has pretty much gotten over the fact that they were like nemesis in high school. She also doesn't seem to understand that this is first and foremost a dating and drama sort of competition, and can't just win all of the challenges or like, yes, be strategic about the challenges to win the show. Like, people have to like you and like your couple. She was just really fucking irritating. I don't think I can put into words how irritating I found her. And that made this book very unenjoyable. Challenges were fun enough to read about, but I really didn't like her character. And then additionally, why the fuck is there a murder plot line? One of the contestants, I think it's one of the contestants on the show, ends up dead, and she and Daniel decide that they're going to team up to investigate, and that's also kind of how they fall in love. I just felt like that plot line kind of came out of nowhere and was just not something that needed to be in the book. Once I started reading, was like, yeah, I think that's going to be too much, and in fact, it was too much. But yeah, I didn't really love this. I didn't love their relationship. I felt like Daniel and Alice just kind of like jump in bed together after like kind of bickering. I didn't feel like there was a true relationship developed. Also seemed to move on really quickly from the fact that she was cheated on by her fiance of like multiple different years. He was a dipshit, but also, come on. Now, the last book I did actually like. This one is called Plus Size Player by Danielle Allen. It follows our two main characters, Nina and Russ. Nina is a plus size influencer slash model. She is trying to kind of break into traditional modeling, or plus size modeling specifically. She has a roster of men. That is kind of what Nina is known for at the beginning of the story. She's dating like 5 different guys, and she, I don't want to say doesn't share their names with us, but she calls one the funny guy, one the fun guy, one the romantic guy. And Russ is the fun one. He takes her on these really adventurous dates, and she finds that she is much more attached to him than any of the other men. And as the story carries on, she realizes that she wants to invest more time and energy into this relationship and maybe get rid of her roster. Mostly because Russ is really proving that he values Nina, he sees her, and he really like kind of loves her as the story carries on. I thought this book was fun, but there were a couple of issues I had with it. First of which being the helicopter scene. Nina and Russ go on a helicopter adventure in the sky, but he is not piloting the helicopter. They decide that they are going to sexually canoodle the back of this helicopter someone else is piloting. Did not find that to be particularly sexy. I don't find that including other people in your sexual escapades is really a cool thing unless that person is, you know, consenting to it. I found that a little bit icky. And then also the fact that these two build a good portion of their relationship off page. I just wanted to see more of that. I wanted to see more of these two chatting. And I know that at the beginning, Nina has no interest in really getting to know these guys, and it's more about like they can offer her in terms of adventure and fun and, you know, I don't want to say a way to pass the time, but she's like not interested in these guys in like a truly romantic sense at the beginning of the story. Still, I wanted to see some of that on page. I wanted to see some exploration of that, and I guess you could say it kind of happens later on in the book, but not in a way that I liked. And then lastly, Nina is plus size, which love. I love that she is so confident. It's not one of those stories where we have a plus size main character who hates themselves. Unfortunately stumbled across a few of those recently, and I don't like that. But what was frustrating was Nina really loved herself, but it seemed like she ran into a lot of different people along her journey, especially in plus size modeling, where people were just really ugly to her about her size. And, you know, I love the way that Nina handled those situations, and she really told everybody to go fuck themselves and had really clever comebacks, but just didn't want there to be so much emphasis on how gross and mean other people can be. It's tough to say that because I know that that can be some people's experiences, and I don't think that people need to sugarcoat things, but felt like that was sort of a reoccurring plot line or reoccurring thing that came up. And I think there should have been other conflicts or other things in Nina's way in terms of her like professional career goals. It kind of seemed like a lot of things fell in her lap, and then someone would be really bitchy to her, but it would lead to even better opportunities. And, you know, that's not like a bad way to write. I just think there could have been other conflicts in the book, other things standing in Nina's way. I did really like Russ. I did really like Nina. Their characters were great, and I was happy when these two ended up together. But if you do not like a lot of sex scenes in books, I would definitely just like steer clear. Next up, we have Forgettable fantasy romances. Now, there were only 2 fantasy romances, I believe, releasing in June for this particular list, neither of which I remember a ton about, neither of which I think you need to rush out and pick up. First up is Realm of Thieves by Karina Halley. I was initially intrigued by this one because it had sort of a House of the Dragons sort of feel to it, but as the book carried on, it felt a little bit too smutty for my particular liking. Not a lot of relationship development. So we have our main character Brynla, who is a dragon egg thief. In this particular world or society, we've got different ruling houses who are, I guess, seeking dragon eggs because dragon eggs in particular give them magical abilities and powers. Now, the dragons used to kind of lord over humanity, and we used to be very, very scared of them, but now most of the dragons are under lock and key. We don't see them, but we do, again, try to steal their eggs for powers. Now, Brynla is, I don't want to say estranged from her family, but she has kind of run away, and she is working for a house, and she is stealing dragons for this particular house until one day she is sort of like apprehended as she is stealing an egg. She is kind of kidnapped and brought back to a rival house, and she is having to work for this rival house now. So it's a little tricky. There's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say court politics, but there are a bunch of different houses, and they are all competing, but kind of like, you know, trying to be the most powerful, whatever. Brynla gets caught up with the guy who ends up kidnapping her. The problem is the guy who ends up kidnapping her, he is pretty gone with Brynla from the very beginning. He, I think upon kidnapping her, is like, wow, she is absolutely stunning. I want to get in her pants, and that happens pretty quickly. There's a lot of sex in this first book, and I feel like some of the fantasy elements sort of fall to the wayside. The only thing that you're really left with is learning about the different kinds of dragons and their different abilities, which doesn't really come into play until the end of the book because, again, we know that dragons are kind of under lock and key. We're not actually seeing them up close. Of course, at the end of the book, you start seeing them up close, but I feel like there's so much page time spent with like, this dragon has this ability and he is this size and he has this kind of scales. I'm like, I don't ultimately give a fuck. I gave this book 3 stars, which feels rather generous in hindsight. Next up, we have A Dance of Lies. This is, I don't want to say a ripoff of Throne of Glass. However, it does have a lot of commonalities, and I think that's where this book unfortunately kind of fails. I understand that a lot of authors are going to be taking inspiration from Sarah J. Maas. Not saying every author does, I'm saying that a fair amount do, because it is in some ways the blueprint for what we consider to be modern day romantasy, right? So this book follows our main character, Vasily, and at the start of the story, she is imprisoned. She used to be a dancer for King Ilian, who is the ruler of this particular land. He and his brothers rule over different portions of one country, I believe. But King Ilian, he wants to control everything. That doesn't really matter, I guess, right now, because our heroine, she's in prison. She used to dance for this man. They used to have kind of a close connection, though it wasn't necessarily a romantic bond. She is accused of murder and is imprisoned for 2 years. And in this time, she develops multiple disabilities, which makes dancing impossible, but very challenging and very painful. Whenever she is approached by King Ilian 2 years into her imprisonment, he is like, hey, I'm gonna need you to actually dance for me again, and I also need you to necessarily be my hit woman, but I do need you to do some investigating because there are multiple different kingdoms coming to our kingdom for kind of like a feast and celebration or whatever, and I want to like take some people out, I want to learn some secrets, etc., so I need your help. She doesn't want to do this, but she also doesn't want to be imprisoned, so decides that she is going to take on this task. Here's the problem with the story. There's 2, I think. My main one is Vasily as a character. You know, I love seeing disability rep in books. I did appreciate that element of Vasily's character, but unfortunately, other than that, she is completely bland, completely flavorless, and she's also incredibly naive. She's not someone who has a lot of like original thoughts, is trying to kind of like work against the powers that be, or is really kind of seeing the intent behind people's actions. I think that's honestly like such a big difference between this character and Selena Sardothien. Don't be wrong, Selena is irritating as fuck and is one of the most irritating characters I've ever read. She has depth to her, right? Like sometimes she is really, really sad about the life circumstances that have led her to the place that she is in. She's also like overly confident in her abilities, which I think can make her kind of fun to read about. I think she is good at reading through people's words and getting down to their intentions. Maybe not always, but she sometimes does do that. Vasily was just so bland across the board. There just really wasn't much to her character, and it's kind of hard to root for a story like this when the main character is so bland. Additionally, I didn't really buy the romance aspect of this book. There are too many men who are potential love interests, and I couldn't really get excited for any of them because none of them are developed enough enough to be convincing. So I don't want to wax on about this story. I found it, again, incredibly bland. I think if you really enjoy court politics, I think this one could maybe work for you. I think that's the strongest element of this book. There are, multiple people coming to the castle who are trying to celebrate, and there are a lot of different takedowns of different factions and different people, and that's interesting enough, but it wasn't enough for me, romantasy or romance sort of way. So yeah, this one was just okay for me. I'd give it like 3 stars. Not so Rockin' Rockstar romances. This is the category that I put together of 2 books that unfortunately didn't really hit the mark for me when it comes to a singer-songwriter or rockstar kind of romance. Just such a disappointment because rockstar romances are some of my favorite, and I love to see them kind of coming back into the mainstream. I just wish these ones hit a little bit harder for me. So first up we have Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I absolutely love this author, but this book was just a total miss for me. I vlogged this, and I'll try to link the vlog in the description down below if you want to hear more of my in-depth thoughts and feelings. So this book's about our main character, Joni, who is not a singer. She is just a songwriter. She is really struggling because her songs are not selling, and or she is not able to put together songs like she used to. This is mostly because of her mom's recent diagnosis of dementia, early onset dementia, and Joni is just feeling very bereft, obviously, because her mom is not doing well. She really misses her family. So she decides, you know what, my career is not going the way that I want it to. I think I need a little bit of a break, so I'm gonna return back to my family's small town. I want to say it's in North Carolina or something like that, and I am going to help my parents with their music venue that they own and spend more time with my mom. Now, when she arrives, Joni finds out that her parents are actually trying to sell the music venue that they own that has been in the family for generations, and Joni doesn't know what to do with this information. Should she try and save this music venue? Should she help her parents in the final months of it being open? She knows for sure she needs to kind of reconnect with her mom and make sure that her mom is okay, or as okay as she can be. She also wants to hopefully like regain her songwriting ability, which proves interesting because she starts getting voices inside of her head. One voice in specific that is singing a song to her. Doesn't have lyrics, the melody isn't totally worked out yet, but she has someone in her head who is hearing the same song. Now, this person is someone she doesn't like very much, former boy bander named Sebastian/Sasha. He ends up coming to the small town, and they try to kind of work on the song that's been in their heads while, I guess, developing their telepathic and sexual connection. Now, my problem with this book is that there's so much going on, and yet so little of it felt fleshed out. I felt like I was kind of behind a wall or like a sheet of glass when it came to these characters. I didn't feel like I was one with the story, and I didn't feel like I could really and fully be one with Joni, who I feel like I really needed to be one with to fully experience a story, right? I feel like the dementia that our heroine's mom faces, while incredibly sad, we don't really get to see it up close. We don't get to see Joni truly reconnect with her mom. There were some like throwaway kind of funny lines from her mom, but not a lot of Joni really spending time with her. Is a plot line where our heroine is feeling disconnected from her best friend. Her best friend might be like lying to her, withholding information, and while that does get resolved, it didn't feel ultimately very satisfying. And then the romance, I don't know, it just felt very weak to me. So in terms of who I would recommend this book to, probably people who really like this author's writing, or people who are really looking for a book with a telepathic kind of connection. Otherwise, I think that this book is just kind of a skip all around. Next up, we have Never Been Shipped. This book has a lot of horny pining going on, and as someone who appreciates horny pining, I did appreciate that, though I will say that's kind of where my compliments end for this book. This one's about our 2 main characters, Micah and John, and they used to be in a band together. This band was really successful for a song that they had in a teen drama back in the day. Kind of think like Paramore and Decode, right? Paramore is known for much more than just Decode at this point, but in this case, this band is really known for this one song in a hit teen show. They have broken up, and Micah, our heroine, tries to go solo at one point, and it doesn't work out so well. So kind of fucking up the band with no return on that investment. Now she is being asked to come back together with the band to perform their hit song on a cruise that is specifically targeted towards fans of the show. It's almost like a convention at sea sort of thing. Micah decides she's going to sign on for this because she doesn't have a lot going on. And John, I believe, is the lead guitarist in this band, or plays some sort of fucking instrument in the band. Doesn't really matter. He has always really had a thing for Micah. He's been carrying a torch this entire time. Micah has always really had a thing for him as well. He buries it really deep down. She ends up dating someone else in the band, and that goes really poorly. He's kind of a fucking douchebag. And this book is really about the band coming back together on the cruise ship. Our heroine kind of rediscovering her love for music, and John also kind of rediscovering his love for music and also his love for our heroine's puss. So here's the thing. I loved the beginning of this book. I loved the first meeting of hero and heroine before they get on the cruise. The doesn't even want to look her way because he is so gone for her, and he has been, again, carrying this torch for so long. I was so invested in that. I think that the tension breaks a little too early, and a lot of the connection between Micah and John is very sexual in nature. As the book carries on, you have to kind of face whether or not sexual feelings are feelings of true romance, if they want to pursue something romantic later down the line. But I think the problem is so little of that is developed on page that it was hard to be like, yes, of course y'all should pursue romance, right? We're not these moments of like connection or real conversations. It's like, do you like when I talk dirty to you? And don't get me wrong, like the dirty talk and sex scenes are fun, but I needed a little bit more behind the romance there. So if you're someone who is just looking for a good time, you want kind of a sexy romp, or someone who again likes horny pining, like maybe this is really going to hit for you. You just needed a little bit more from the romance for this to truly romantic. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I think I also gave the last book 3 stars for the record, but both of these are just kind of ultimately forgettable.
You know, as much as I love pretending otherwise, it is, in fact, still summer in Texas. Good motherfucking god, it's hot. Let's get gay, shall we, for a second? I've got 3 romances to talk to you about. First up, we have The Next Chapter. This was such a tough one for me because this is what I wish Ashley Herring Blake's writing was like. Got these real, raw characters that I actually really connected with. My problem with this book, though, was that one of our heroines was, I don't want to say duplicitous, but she did lie to the other heroine a good portion of the story, knowing that her counterpart really had trouble with liars. And I think most of us have trouble with liars, but if you've been spurned or been burned by someone lying to you, I think having your potential love interest lie to you for the entirety of your relationship would definitely not be a great bedrock, you know, for a relationship. So this book follows our 2 main characters, Jude and Kat. Kat is a former child star, TV star specifically, who is trying to have like a second wind in her career. She feels very stuck and she wants to act on Broadway. So she's back in New York City taking some acting classes and trying to get into a really particular show. The showrunner is notoriously difficult, but like she's determined and she is going to do this. But she also is wanting to explore her queer identity a little bit more, and she wants to come out publicly, but she's not sure the best way to do that. Her manager thinks that having a steady long-term relationship would look really good. And whenever Kat ends up meeting Jude at a bookstore where she is like searching for queer books, she thinks that, I don't want to say Jude would be the perfect mark, but that Jude would be someone she would like to be seen in a relationship with. So to end up dating, I don't think, and it's not even that I don't think, I know that Jude doesn't know that this is kind of like a fake dating situation, that Kat is kind of using this opportunity to come out publicly, I guess, amongst other things that she lies about. And that is just a little icky to me. It definitely makes their relationship bad at the end of the book. Like, they do have a third act breakup. There is a lot of work both characters kind of need to do separately. In terms of character journeys, we have Kat again trying to revitalize her career and reckon with her queer identity, and Jude is very much out and proud, but her career is kind of in jeopardy because her mom used to manage and perhaps own a bookstore that Jude works at. Someone else got it in Jude's mom's will. Jude is trying to buy back the store, but she doesn't like the person who's managing the store. It's like a whole thing. She's kind of on a career exploration journey of her own. It was just a really frustrating read because I really liked Jude's character. There were a lot of really good relationship development moments. I didn't feel like this was half-baked in any way. Kat lied. And I think that makes for a really challenging story. So I give this book 3 stars. It was good. I think that this is definitely worth a read. Just know going into it, you might be a little bit frustrated by the lying. Next up, we have Winging It With You. This is a tough one for me. I finished this today. I did enjoy it. It was just not very memorable to me. This book is about our 2 main characters, Asher and Theo. Asher is supposed to be competing on this sort of like Amazing Race type show. It's a couples competition show. Not necessarily romantic couples, but it's like a pairs kind of show. And when Asher shows up at the airport with his boyfriend, he ends up being unceremoniously dumped romantically and also the show. So Asher is kind of unsure of what he's going to do. He wants to compete in this competition. There is the potential for a good windfall of cash, and he wants to use this to kind of revitalize a program at the school that he works at. He's a teacher, very passionate, like STEM teacher. He does happen across someone at a TGI Fridays though, and that person would be Theo, who is a pilot, been asked to not fly because he's already had too many flight hours this month, and he's feeling a little bit rudderless. He's put so much of his identity into his work life. Whenever this opportunity arises to be on the show with Asher, he's supposed to not do anything work related. He's like, you know what, fuck it, let's do this. This is a good opportunity for me. It could be fun. I need to take more risks. And so he does that. So it's basically strangers to friends to lovers in the midst of this show that happens. It's fine. I just didn't feel like Theo and Asher had very distinctive voices. Strange, because I think that both of these characters had separate audio narrators. They were alternating POV chapters. Voices of the characters just didn't feel distinct enough, even though they have completely different careers and backgrounds and family lives. I was missing something here. It was not a bad book, very, very pleasant read, but just nothing that I was like, oh my god, swooning over. And then a book that I kind of actively really didn't like is Ready to Score. A copy of this via audiobook over on NetGalley, which I don't think I've ever done before. I normally just get ebooks from them. This one follows Jade and Francesca, who are both teachers at a high school or middle school, can't remember which, and they both want to become football coaches. They're competing for a spot to become football coaches, or a football coach. There's one spot to become a football coach. Jade always kind of thought that it was a given that it would be her spot, but now that Francesca's at the school and everybody really likes Francesca, Jade thinks she's in trouble, so she decides she's going to go to this monthly or weekly poker game. The current football coach, who's going to retire soon, is hosting. She's going to try to like become chummy buddy with everybody, and who should be there? Jessica. So it's, I don't know that I would call it enemies to lovers. It's basically Jade just being an asshole to Francesca for absolutely no reason. Like, you guys are competing for the same job, sure, you really want it, but it's not like the person who is going to hire you asked y'all to be rude to each other, or you've got to like beat the other person out, or like there's no competition really. It's just like who's going to be a better fit for this job. The premise of the book I felt was pretty weak, and Jade was just kind of mean. Like, I didn't really the chemistry between either of them because Jade was just too busy being an asshole the majority of the time. So 2 stars for this one, just totally a miss for me. I like this author, but this was not it.
This category I'm calling Hate You, Let's Kiss, because these are enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers romances that worked on varying levels for me. Some of them I loved, some of them not so much. So first up, we have Battle of the Bookstores. This is one that I actually did really enjoy. I've logged the experience reading it. I honestly think that if you're someone who is skeptical of book-related romances, I think you would actually enjoy this one. So this one follows Josie and Ryan. Josie is the manager of a bookstore called Tabula and Scripta. They sell primarily literary fiction. Ryan is the manager of Happy Endings, which is a romance-only bookstore. They find out that their landlord is going to demolish the walls between these bookstores and the coffee shop in between them, turn it into a sort of like Starbucks meets Barnes & Noble kind of situation, right? You can get your coffee, you can get books for the whole family, and it's going to be one bookstore uniting. So we're not going to need 2 managers. So Josie and Ryan are like pitted against each other, the sales competition to see who is going to become the manager of this store, and they're both committed to keeping their jobs and being a really great bookstore, so a bit of a struggle. And these two, at the very beginning of the story, are already kind of off on the wrong foot. They don't really understand each other's genre preferences very much. Josie thinks that Ryan's books are silly, and Ryan thinks that Josie's a little too uptight. She's kind of a bitch to him for no reason because she thinks that he doesn't respect her. The twist here is that these two are actually online companions. They are a part of this like bookseller forum, and these two are friends online. So friends online, enemies in person, and y'all know how I feel about a knowing each other in 2 places kind of romance. I think if anything, it adds to the excitement and adds to the relationship development of a story, and this book is no exception. I think what really stands out to me about this book in particular, though, is the way in which our author was able, or author duo, I think this is 2 people, the way that this author duo is able to really ride the slow burn for the majority of this book. This is not one of those situations in which we go from enemies to fucking immediately. These two really have to go from enemies to friends to lovers, and even when they are starting to kind of break down those walls sexually, there's still a little bit of hesitation there. They have to kind of revisit the sexual component of their relationship later on down the line. It just felt so realistic, so well developed. It did read a little bit slow. This book is a little bit longer than I was expecting it to be, but I didn't feel like I was suffering or struggling through the page length of this book. I felt like I was seeing 2 real people fall in love. I thought this was super, super charming and honestly pretty memorable, and as someone who doesn't tend to like books about books, I was pleasantly surprised with this one. Next up is probably my favorite book from this entire video. That would be Gloves Off by Stephanie Archer. This book I read a couple of months ago at this point, pretty much right when it came out. I was blown away. It's about Alexi and Georgia, who are having a sort of marriage of inconvenience situation. These two hate each other for reasons that are explored throughout the book, but they are getting married because Alexi needs a green card required to stay in the country to be able to continue his professional hockey career, and our heroine Georgia needs to get married so that she can get money from her inheritance to contribute to a program at her hospital that is at the risk of, I think, being defunded. She is a doctor. The thing I loved about this book is it's a book of misconceptions. Alexi really thinks that Georgia is this like trust fund kid based on her last name and based on the fact that she's always wearing really beautiful shoes. She does nothing to really break down these misconceptions, especially at the beginning. She thinks this guy is just like a hostile dickhead. She thinks that he is this hockey player who doesn't have any respect for her as a doctor or as a person, and so she kind of hates him as well. What works so well is that over the course of the story, these misconceptions are broken down not just in words by, our heroine telling our hero, I'm not actually a trust fund kid, but by showing him her actions that she is not the kind of person that he thinks she is, and vice versa. I felt like it was so well done. It was also so sexy. I felt like the sexual tension was totally there. So we're having to live in the same house together. There's a forced proximity element. It was just a whole lot of fun and built on the kind of like subtle relationship development that I like to see in my stories. It didn't feel overdone. It didn't feel like it was too long or anything like that. Almost get swept away in the story, and by the end you're like, wait, this was so masterfully done. It's the kind of thing that I absolutely adore. So this is a 5-star read. By contrast, a book that I didn't totally love is Look Before You Leap. I believe this book is by Virginia Heath. This is a historical romance about Guy and Lottie. Lottie is a governess who's not very good at her job. She goes to Miss Prentice's school, I guess, to learn how to become a governess and how to, I guess, gain a higher rank in society. Most women who end up going to these sorts of schools to become governesses are not necessarily a part of the gentry, and so by nature of them going to these schools and getting, a high-wage job, they are, improving their life circumstances. But our heroine, she doesn't care so much about that, I guess. She kind of fucks up and gets fired from one of her jobs, and she ends up getting assigned to be a lady's companion to this really crotchety old woman instead. It's like, hey, you can't handle kids? We'll give you a crotchety old lady instead. Now, this crotchety old lady is going to her nephew's birthday party at her sister's estate. Basically, our hero Guy is 30 years old. His mom really, really wants him to get married and have grandbabies for her, and he has no interest in marrying because he gets jilted in his early 20s by someone who ends up marrying wealthier, I guess, than him. He's definitely not looking for love when he ends up running into Lottie in Hyde Park, I want to say, even before they go to the country estate. It's like before she even gets hired by the crotchety old lady. They run into each other. He's impressed by her horse lady skills. It's very Bridgerton, that opening scene of Anthony and whatever the fuck her name is, Kate, running into each other and him being like, God, she can ride a horse and she's sexy. Kind of a similar situation here, okay? Now he's seeing her in a different context, like, oh, you're actually the lady's maid companion woman to my aunt, who's kind of a bitch. That's interesting, but also I hate your stinking guts. I don't like you very much. They got off on the wrong foot, right? Sexy, but we got off on the wrong foot. Sort of an enemies to lovers situation, whilst there are other women coming to this estate to try to win this man's hand in marriage. Now, here's my problem. I think part of it was the audio narration. The guy who narrates for the hero, wow, whatever the hero gets enraged, he like kind of yells when you're listening, and it makes for a kind of scary listening experience. I do need to warn you of that. The idea of a man raising his voice to you is frightening. Don't pick up this audiobook. I think that's part of it. I think a bigger part of it, though, is that this stayed in the enemies to wanting to fuck territory a little bit too long for me. I felt like the reason that these two didn't like each other didn't have a lot of ground to stand on. I wanted them to go from a little bit of animosity to more of an understanding kind of situation, like in Gloves Off, and then them kind of hop into bed. Instead, it's like, God, I want to choke her, but I also kind of want to fuck her. I'm not saying that's bad. Just think when it's acted upon too early, especially in the context of a historical romance, it just does not end up really working for me. I found Guy annoying, and Lottie was fun, but also kind of annoying. So I think that this author's just not really for me. I read another book by her, I think for a video last year. I hated that one because the guy was a really bad dad, and our heroine was a governess who loved kids but didn't even like his own kids. This one wasn't quite that bad, but it just was not it for me. So I'm giving this book 2 stars as well. Okay, last category, my friends. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, maybe it makes sense the more that I talk about these books. First up, we have The Ripple Effect, and this one I am labeling ugly. Not because it's a bad book, not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I didn't finish it. I know I could have put this in the did not finish category, but I was really hoping that I would finish this book. I think the problem is that I'm just not equipped to read this physically. I got the arc from NetGalley, and I have been struggling my way through the first like 10% of this book. I have picked it up 3-4 different times, and I just can't seem to connect with the writing. I think that listening to this on audio would be great, but there's no audiobook available at the moment, so I'm just gonna cut my losses at the moment. But this one does seem pretty intriguing. It's about our heroine Stellar and our hero Lyle, aka McHugh. His last name is McHugh. He is a therapist slash whitewater rafting, I was gonna say coach. I'm not not really sure what he does. Dick is that he helps couples, I guess, stay together by doing these sort of like adventurous things together. Our heroine is an ER doctor who's really burnt out and is looking for a temporary job so that she can stay in the beautiful tourist town that she has grown accustomed to. It's a little tricky though because her and Lyle hooked up a few months ago and it's kind of an awkward situation, but he is hiring a doctor to kind of like be on the premises, I guess his business endeavor. And because of a series of events that happen, these two are going to fake engaged. I don't really understand how that comes into play. I didn't get far enough in to see kind of why that comes into play, but I saw really good early reviews for this. This seems like the kind of book that I would be into. Be a little bit more Abby Jimenez than Tessa Bailey, shall we say, a little bit more emotionally wrought, which too, I want that, but I just, again, couldn't really connect, so I can't speak much on this one. Next up, I would call this The Good. We have When Javi Met Mari by Mia Sosa. I say good. This one is kind of tricky for me because I'm not sure that I believe in the premise that love conquers all, which I feel like it's kind of a tricky thing to say when you are in the business of talking about romance, but I think as I age, I start to notice things that I wouldn't personally be okay with. So let me run it back and tell you what this book's about. We've got Javi and Mari. They were friends in college. They have maintained their friendship for the most part post-grad, and they have always been best friends who at various times have like wanted something more from the other person. It's just never really come into fruition because specifically Javi is a little bit insecure about his dreams and his ambitions. Mari has always been very studious, very book smart, and she is now an attorney working for her father, and they do sort of like PR, Hollywood, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, entertainment law. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Javi, he wants to write a musical. He has had this idea for a musical, I don't want to say his entire life, but basically as long as Mari has known him, but he has never really pursued writing it in earnest. It's not that Mari is like upset at this or thinks it's a turn off. Javi just doesn't want to feel like he's holding Mari back. He doesn't want her to feel like to support him, and so he has kind of been trudging along doing odd jobs for the majority of their friendship, just kind of avoiding doing what he really is passionate about, and as a result he doesn't feel like he's good enough for her. Okay, the very start of the story, Mari is like, hey Javi, do you want to get dinner? I know it's been a while since we've seen each other, and there was a slight period of time where they like kind of stopped talking. We don't know why that is until later on in the book, and Javi's like, yeah, of course, I am finally writing my musical. I've been going to therapy, which he really needs considering some of the things that have happened in his past. He is excited to be able to share this news with Mari and potentially like pursue something romantic, but his plan is unfortunately foiled when Mari ends up bringing her fiance to this dinner. Javi didn't even really know Mari was dating someone super seriously, so he is a little bit like, what the fuck's going on? And he instantly doesn't like this guy. His name is Alex. So this book is told from two different timelines, and I think if I'm recalling correctly, two different points of view. We've got the past timeline where we get to see the friendship kind of unfold, and in the present day, we get to see the events leading up to the wedding of Mari and Alex, right? Of course, it doesn't end up happening because like there's a lot to like here. I think that doing dual POV, dual timeline could be a little bit tricky. I think it could be hard to convince me, even if you have those flashback scenes, that these two are meant to be together. In this case, I did feel like these two were pretty well suited. They had this like effortless chemistry. I really liked them. I think Mia Sosa is a fantastic writer, so I wasn't really surprised at that. I think what I am a little bit like question marky around is the idea that these two are compatible long term. It's not even that Javi is in a non-traditional career field. It's the fact that he is so insecure that he couldn't pursue romance ahead of time, like ahead of him writing this, right? And also the fact that it took him like decades to actually pursue what he wants to do, I think just kind of shows a level of incompatibility. I think that it can sometimes work that people can have, different work ethics or, different goals in life, but these two, I don't know that I would want to constantly be like having to gas up my partner and give them confidence, pursue something that they wouldn't pursue on their own. I'm not saying I agree with Javi's assessment that he's not good enough for Mari. I am just saying that like his actions for the majority of the book made me feel like, dude, just grow the fuck up a little bit. So it's so tough for me. I think I'd probably give it 4 stars because it is really well written. It is emotional. I did feel the chemistry. The sex was hot. Like, I don't know if I actually think they're compatible, which is like kind of a crazy thing to say. So 4 stars. And then the bad. We've got Caught Up by Navessa Allen. I didn't enjoy the first book, Lights Out. I thought it was like fun enough. I think I gave it 3 stars. This book was not good, and it's not good for the reasons that a lot of Goodreads reviewers say that it's not good. It's just not good in that it was kind of a weird book. Like the vibes were just off, okay? So our heroine is a sex worker. She loves her job. She has people who like help her produce her kind of OnlyFans sort of content, and our hero Junior is someone that used to know our heroine in high school, and they have like not an enemies to lovers relationship, but our heroine heroine doesn't really like our hero very much, and he is a part of the mafia, though he doesn't really want to be. It's out the identity of our heroine. He's been like subscribed to her OnlyFans for a while, then he finds out her identity and he like wants to meet her in person. He's been like subscribed to her OnlyFans and like paying for like very specific videos and content to be made, and she likes making it for him. But when he is like, hey, do you want to meet up in person? She's like, no, I don't know who the fuck you are. You're a stranger. And he's like trying to find a way to tell her in real life who he is. Now, there just was something off about this one. I didn't really feel a chemistry between the two of them, especially from our heroine's point of view. It seemed like she was mostly annoyed by our hero majority of the time that he was trying to pursue her. I don't know. It just was nothing here for me. Nothing here for me. The reason that a lot of people have been rating this book negatively is because there's a non-binary character. I think you're a fucking asshole if you rate a book lowly because you can't understand pronouns. Get the fuck over it. It's 2025, okay? I gave this book 2 stars because I just think like the content of the book was just not very good, not because it's too woe. God forbid. Anyway, those are all of the books. I believe it's 21. I did a top 5 last time, and I don't even have 5 books here to share with you that I absolutely love, but let me tell you 3 I did enjoy and that I do like recommend to pretty much everyone universally. So I hope you could find something amongst these books, even if I didn't like them. First up, we have Gloves Off by Stephanie Archer. Again, I think this one was so good. I wouldn't call it miscommunication trope so much as misconception trope, and I love the whole like marriage of convenience line here. Just so fun. Such a good sports romance. Battle of the Bookstores by Ellie Brady. I think this one was again so well developed, and the hero is like genuinely so swoony. And then When Javi Met Mari, I think this one is very similar to Battle of the Bookstores in the sense that it is like so well developed and well realized. It felt like real people falling in love, and the chemistry was certainly there, even if like, you know, I'm uncertain of the long-term compatibility. Most people could probably overlook that and probably aren't so deep in the weeds of like real people and will they actually, you know, work long-term. I think most people would enjoy both of those books. So those are my top 3. This has been an interesting month. I will say it has been hard for me to get through some of these books, frankly. It was much tougher this time around than last time. I'm hopeful that July and August's lists will be better. Even hopeful. I've already started reading from both of those lists and they are so far better. So I will report back in a couple of weeks on the July list, and then a couple of weeks, and then I will report back on the August list. I'm trying to get through these because, you know, summer's over. I will say I think, you know, romance is eternal, whether they are new releases or not. I feel like matters less. So thanks for watching this. I hope you got something from it. I love y'all so much. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book the past month was. I know this past month was August and I'm reading June books, but that's okay. Give me something amazing, a 5-star read to add to my TBR. Love y'all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.